What's up, everybody? My name is Dan Kornhauser.
And I'm Sam Teets.
Thank you guys for tuning in to the NFL Draft Show with myself and Sam. And we got a lot to talk about. Very exciting show this time. We're going to jump into Sam's brand new, fresh out the kitchen, big board. We're going to go over some things there. I have some questions, and we're going to talk about some of your rankings and stuff. I'm very excited to go over that. But before we jump into it, we are going to go over 3 quarterback prospects who have just played this weekend, played their bowl games. We're going to talk about Malik Willis in Liberty, talk about Zappe, Zappe out in Western Kentucky, and McCall for Coastal Carolina. Now, all 3 quarterbacks had themselves a game. And of these 3, as of now, the highest ranked quarterback is Malik Willis from Liberty. And he had himself a game, 13 of 24, 3 touchdowns through the air. He added another one on the ground. 2 more on the ground on 8 carries, 58 yards rushing. So he had himself a game. This is his last game for Liberty. He'll be entering the draft, and he may very well be a first-round pick.
Yeah, it's just a shame that these guys, they all went against such low-level competition. You got Chris McCall versus Northern Illinois, Malik Willis versus Eastern Michigan. Zappe probably the toughest game against Appalachian State. I just wish we got to see these guys against high-level competition because they are great quarterbacks. They are great college quarterbacks. But it's really hard to try to decipher what's the offense around and, where do you put the credit, per se? Because a team like Coastal Carolina, they have an offense that just generates these passing numbers right now. This is the offense they run. It's not going to transition to the NFL. At least offensively, the scheme won't. So you have to worry about that.
Yep.
Western Kentucky, kind of the same thing. They're in an offense that just generates so much passing yards. That's why Zappe almost had 6,000 passing yards. I was kind of annoyed. They pulled him out before he hit 6,000. They actually benched him, I think, for most of the fourth quarter. Obviously, make sure he didn't get hurt. But 33 yards away, just let the guy get it. So, I don't know. It's interesting because Zappe comes out, sets the single-season records in the FBS for passing yards and passing touchdowns in that bowl game. It's just incredible to see how well guys like that have played. And McCall is someone I really like a lot at the college level, but I just don't know about transitioning to the NFL if he can do that.
Now, of these 3, would you say that Willis is your highest ranked on your big board right now?
Yeah, he is right now, but I would not rule out Zappe passing him. Zappe's one of the guys I highlighted on my big board that I think really has a chance to skyrocket up the rankings as we get more eyes on him.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to see him play on more of a level playing field. I think he's going to the Senior Bowl this year, I'm pretty sure, which would be fantastic because I want to see what it looks like when he's playing not necessarily in that Western Kentucky offense with Jared Stearns, with a couple 1,000-yard receivers. I'm interested to see what he plays like in that situation because I think he does have a chance to be a second-round pick. You think Davis Mills was a third-round selection. Mm-hmm. If Davis Mills was a third-round pick, Zappe should at least be a second-rounder, in my opinion.
As of now, let's put it like this. He came into the season, Zappe did, as a likely late pick, undrafted type guy. As the season went on, he played very well, and he showed that he does have the certain NFL traits that definitely make him a legitimate quarterback prospect, especially in this year's class where no one's really taken the step forward as a QB1, and it's really who these teams like for whatever systems they run and stuff like that is what it's going to come down to, really. As of now, there's no consensus, as we know. So this is a good year for him to be in the quarterback pool. And he does, like I said, have some traits that you look for in a starting NFL quarterback. My only questions with him lie more beyond the competition, which isn't always it is a fair thing to say because obviously it's more impressive playing against guys in the SEC or the ACC or whatever than playing, the Appalachian states of the world and Northern Illinois and stuff like that. So yes, there is something to that. But as we know, if you're a good football player, the NFL scouts will find you. And in this case, Western Kentucky isn't, some random 1AA or whatever school, but Zappe really put himself on the map this season, and my only questions with him really lie with the arm strength and the deep ball. He showed he can make most throws, no problem, but in games that I saw, and even in this one, Yes, he can put it there. Yes, his placement is right. But there's times when he tries to go deep middle or try to push it deep and hit the sidelines on a back shoulder or something like that, where his receivers made some good plays on the ball, and it's going to be a lot harder to be successful if you can't push the ball consistently down the middle of the field or test the borders, test the sidelines. So I'm
I noticed
curious
that
to see how that works into like the Senior Bowl and stuff like that.
I noticed that some of his throws seem to be a little bit more looping than you would want them to be, less on a rope and more of a loop for some of
Yeah.
those deep passes. That's a bit of a concern for me. Also, you watch his throwing motion; it's a little bit unorthodox in my opinion. His throwing motion seems to waste a little bit of time, and we know that throwing motion necessarily you can get away with almost any throwing motion in college, frankly, and win games. But at the NFL level, that's just something entirely different. So I want to see the throwing motion get cleaned up a little bit. I think his arm strength. I mean, we learned this from Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow can still sling it, by the way. It's not like Joe Burrow has a weak arm, but
No.
you don't have to have the super strong arm to go in the NFL and be a great QB. I think Zappe has the opportunity to be a starting level quarterback, and I know that other people feel that way as well. But someone like McCall also has arm strength concerns, in my opinion. Something like that, I'm a little bit more worried because obviously the offense he's playing in. And I just feel more comfortable watching Zappe right now that he'll make the right decisions. He'll put the ball in accurate places. McCall, on the other hand, I like him a lot as a college QB. I just don't think he's going to transition to the NFL and be a top 100 pick.
And he's not coming out. He's going to be coming out next year, right? Because he's what, a sophomore or?
Yeah, so he's very weird because he's got a lot of time, a lot of eligibility left. As of right now, he's classified as a sophomore, even though he's 3 years into his time at Coastal. So he could come out this year if he wanted to. But I believe the idea right now is he's going to go back to school.
So with that in mind, with him out of the picture, when a little bit of forecasting here, when we get to draft day between Zappe and Willis, because like you said, Zappe's played his way into the conversation of these quarterbacks. I don't know if he'll be in the conversation for the top quarterback. He has a way to go for that, but he'll have some fans for sure. So come April, come draft time, who do you think goes higher at the end of the day? Do you think Zappe will end up having coaches fall in love with him, with his knowledge of the game, the knowledge of his offense, his placement, his accuracy in short intermediate? Or do you think teams will fall in love with Willis, Lamar Jackson light, not Lamar Jackson in terms of MVP kind of guy, right? In the first couple of years as a starter, but Malik Jackson playing style, where he's more mobile, one of the better athletes on the field, regardless of position, and can make some pretty throws. So which one of these guys do you think has that better placement come April?
It's probably going to be Willis, in my opinion, and it's not because I think Willis is an inherently better quarterback than Zappe. I really couldn't tell you which one's better right now. But Willis, just the athleticism, what we've seen from teams transitioning and trying to build offenses around mobile quarterbacks, partially because it's easier for them to build offensive lines when you have a mobile quarterback who can escape. And right now, there's just not a lot of great offensive line play in the NFL. So that certainly helps that trend a little bit. And Willis does have a very strong arm. Willis has a better arm in terms of just pure strength than Zappe. He had some really good throws, by the way, against Eastern Michigan. I don't want to say he just ran them over because they were weak competition. He had some genuinely very good throws. And he has worked with a lower-level supporting cast at Liberty. Some of my concerns, though, is that he's had a couple multi-interception games this year against bad competition. Like objectively, teams that get steamrolled 56-0 by SEC caliber teams. And when I say SEC, I don't mean Missouri. I mean like even Auburn, even something like Auburn or Georgia, something like that, who just destroy these lower level teams. And Willis is throwing 2 or 3 interceptions against them. And that's at some point, you said the offensive line has not defended him very well. He's not had a lot of time to throw. But there have been bad decisions. And he's made a lot of bad decisions this year. So in my opinion, the decision making for me from Malik Willis is questionable. I'm not really a fan of his accuracy right now at some point. I think he's a little bit inaccurate. He misses those tight window throws. But he's made some of those as well. We're just going to have to see. Right now, I don't really know which one's better because I want to see Zappe play out of that system to begin with to see what he can do. And as for Willis, I want to see if he has a better supporting cast, what he's capable of. So I want to wait a little bit to see. But as of right now, I expect an NFL team would prioritize Malik Willis's ability over Zappe's accuracy, I guess you'd say.
I had to put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's cool.
I have to put you on the spot in mid-December.
That's all right. I enjoy it.
So, all right. So, you know what? it's big board time. All right. I'm done talking about these quarterbacks. Everyone loves talking about quarterbacks. That's where the money's made. But let's talk about your big board. Before we do, because I'm slacking, I got excited. I need to talk about betting.net. We are powered by betting.net, and it's your best bet for sportsbook and casino sites. Head on over to betting.net. So, Sam, here we go. I have your big board pulled up in front of me, and I put it in my consensus rankings chart. So I have your rankings lined up with like 10 other big boards next to you, just so I can have like an on-screen comparison to where your big board stands to other big boards from around the web.
Yeah.
And a few things stood out to me right away. Why don't you give me your top 10?
All right, let's start out. My top 10, number 1, Aiden Hutchinson. I think this is no longer the cool thing to do. Back a couple months ago, it was like you put Aiden Hutchinson at 1. You were different. You were being cool. You're going against the grain. Now it's kind of an even split. It's either Hutchinson or it's Thibodeau, who I have at number 2. So it's the 2 edge rushers, 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. Kyle Hamilton 3. And I did not factor in positional value. I should say that. I just did how good of a football player you are. If you take positional value into account, obviously QBs would rise up higher on the board. I just did purely based on talent alone. So Hutchinson 1, Thibodeau 2, 3 is Kyle Hamilton, 4 is Tyler Linderbaum, 5 is Evan Neal, 6 is Derek Stingley, 7 is George Karlaftis, 8 is Trent McDuffie, 9 is Kyrie Elam, and 10 is Ikem Ekwonu.
Now, this was when I looked at this big board. A, I love it. B, some things did stand out to me. And you know what I'm going to say stood out to me right away. Do I have to say it?
Yeah, go.
I'm going to say it. Tyler Linderbaum.
Yeah.
As your number 4 overall prospect. I'm glad that you said your board is regardless of positional value, because that's key. That's very, very important.
Yeah, because obviously if you're not putting a center up in the top 10, if you're talking about predicting top 10 picks or something like that, you're not going to have a center go that high. Regardless of how talented they are, it just doesn't make sense. It would be career suicide to do that in the NFL, because you can't take a center and put him in like that position, especially if you're a team that's in the top 10. You need to have really talented players at those key positions. And even if you're picking top 10 and you have a really good offense, really good team, you need to focus on continuing to build those positions. Think about what the Buccaneers did at cornerback. The Buccaneers take a corner or an edge rusher every year in the first round. They have a tremendous team. They have got great corners. They have great edge rushers. They just do it constantly, continue refueling at those positions no matter what. So to someone taking someone like Tyler Linderbaum in the top 10 wouldn't make sense. But in terms of pure talent, this guy's an easy blue chip player, easily one of the top 5 guys in this draft. And I think the top 4 for me, even Hutchinson, Thibodeau, Hamilton, and Linderbaum. To me, the top 4 might even separate themselves in terms of being the best guys in this draft.
Now, you're putting Linderbaum up there. Like you're putting him up there with like the Brandon Scherfs and the Quentin Nelsons, the interior offensive linemen who went really high in the draft and became elite players at their position. Quentin Nelson, maybe the best guard in football. Scherf is a top 3 guard. He's been a Pro Bowl guard every year, damn near, that he's been in Washington. Steve Hutchinson, I'm pretty sure was a really high pick as well at guard for, I think, Seattle and then Minnesota or something like that, or vice versa. But regardless, so you're putting him up there with like those kinds of guys. You're talking about a center ranked in your top 5 players overall, regardless of positional value and whatever. Having a center up there in your top 5 means you expect this guy to be not only one of the better players in this class, but I mean, if you're ranking this guy this high, you're expecting him to be one of the best players at his position in the league real quick. A lot sooner.
Oh yeah, within the first 3 years, I think he'll be probably top 7 to top 5. I think someone in that range will probably be making a Pro Bowl by year 3, I expect.
Okay.
And I think he could be an All-Pro. He could be an All-Pro before the end of his rookie contract. That's where I'm looking right now.
That's some lofty praise right there, my friend. That's very, very lofty love right there for this man.
That's what you have to expect from a guy when you're taking him in the top 4 picks, though. If you're ranking him objectively as being a top 4 player in the draft, in each draft, you're going to get multiple. You're probably going to get 10 All-Pros out of the draft. Now, maybe 8 of those guys are going to be first-round picks. You're going to get 2 or 3 from somewhere else in the draft. Because it's just how it happens. But if you're getting that many guys, one of the guys you put in the top 5, all the guys you put in the top 5 should be all pros technically if you do it correctly.
You're absolutely right. They absolutely should be. Now, let's move on from Tyler Linderbaum. You mentioned Trent McDuffie as your cornerback 1, 8th overall prospect from Washington. 5'11", 190. What drew you to him? What makes him your CB1? And what puts him above tons of talent at the position? Besides him, Elam, Ahmad Gardner, Roger McCreary, just to name a few, Andrew Booth Jr. What puts him above all these other top prospects?
I think I still have Stingley a little bit higher. I have Stingley at 6. I still have Stingley number 1.
And Stingley's number 1. Sorry. So quarterback 2, but still very
but
lucky.
It's very close in my opinion. It's very close because McDuffie has really overcome some size concerns to be one of, if not the best cornerback in college football. The 3 guys that stood out to me this year as having the best years by draft eligible corners in college football this year: Ahmad Gardner, Trent McDuffie, Roger McCreary. Those were the 3 best corners for my money in college football this season. And McDuffie has been one of the best tacklers at his position since entering college football. He has 6 missed tackles in his entire college football career. And he's got close to a couple hundred tackles at this point. He's up there in terms of getting involved. He's always been physical, especially coming downhill in the running game, which is something you don't see a lot from corners, especially someone that size. This is a guy who does not play in the slot. He plays out wide. He's got 94 career tackles. And like I said, just 6 misses up to this point. This season, targeted 36 times on nearly 300 coverage snaps, only allowed 16 completions for 111 yards, no touchdowns. Didn't have an interception, but he had 5 passes defensed. This guy is a shutdown corner. And I understand there'll be size concerns. He won't match up perfectly against every receiver. If you put him against a prime Julio Jones, that's probably not going to work out. But, I mean, look, the reality is there's only so many of those guys in the NFL. Maybe you don't put him on DK Metcalf, okay? I can understand that. But there's a bunch of other guys he can cover. I think he can be an elite shutdown corner. And he's going to be one of the few shutdown guys coming out of this draft.
Now, you have 3 corners ranked in your top 10. Kair Elam is number 9, followed, like you said, by Ikem Ekwonu. There you go. Spoiler alert, I am awful, absolutely terrible with last names. I try, and even if I look it up and see what the pronunciation is, it goes out the window 5 minutes later because that's just the way my brain works. I pronounced Ruben Drugans for a couple of episodes on the radio back in high school with my buddy Bob when we had our little sports talk show after school. And he let it go for a couple of episodes, and then he finally corrected me. I was like, dude, it's Ruben Drones, not Ruben Drugans. You sound ridiculous. Get it together. I never got better. I don't know what it is. It's just a mental block. So when I mispronounce names, I apologize. I promise it's not personal to any of these guys or anybody else. I'm just terrible with names. But Elam in your top 10. Now, looking at this, comparing to other boards around the web, both of these guys are ranked a lot higher than the average. And you explained McDuffie. I figure Elam is in a similar boat, only with him, it's doing it in the SEC, yeah?
Yeah, it's doing it in the SEC. And I can look back at the Alabama game where he was targeted 7 times, only allowed 2 catches for 36 yards. He did give up a touchdown, but he had 2 passes defensed in that game. So Elam, to me, is a guy who, unfortunately, was kind of injured, banged up this year. Didn't feel like he was ever really 100%. I would have loved to have seen him playing at full strength because he was really good in 2019 and in 2020. Florida cornerbacks don't have the best track record so far in the NFL, but hey, you got to scout the player, not the helmet. So I do think he's a really good player. Tackling could improve. He's got the frame. He's 6'2", about 200 pounds. He has the frame to be a really good run defender and be a tackler. And we've seen flashes of him being an impact player in that area, but it's not consistent yet. For his career at Florida, only allowed 46.8 completion percentage when targeted. He gave up just about 625 yards on about 900-something coverage snaps. He's done fairly well. This year is probably his worst year, actually, in college, because he did have some games where he just was not with it to some extent. Like the Florida State game, he allowed 73 yards, which is not what I would have expected from him, especially after he was so good against LSU and so good against Alabama and good against Georgia as well. But then he came out and didn't have a great game against Florida State. That's a little bit my concern with him because he's been hot and cold to me. Like, he'll rise for great competition and then struggle against like Samford or something like that for just no reason in particular. So I'm a little concerned, But based on the high-end play, this is a really good prospect. This is a top 15 caliber prospect based on the high-end play. I could see him falling into like the mid-20s, but I choose to believe that he's going to turn out to be one of the higher-end players. I do want to see some of his measurables. I'm interested in the speed, frankly. I want to see how fast he is compared to some of the other guys in this class.
Now with him, like you said, he's got the height, weight, speed that you look for to match up against these bigger wideouts in today's game. But do you have any concerns, at least with Elam, when it comes to smaller, shiftier receivers? Do you have any questions or concerns, really? Because, I mean, you have him in your top 10. So to have him as a top 10 prospect, there's got to be, a lot of checks that you check off on these boxes. Some of my concerns, because I am a Gators fan, I watch every Florida game. So being a fan, a non-biased one, because I will say, well, my guys are, but you're right. There were times where he flashed inconsistencies, where he did not play up to his athletic, physical profile, where he let smaller guys beat him, when he let shiftier guys beat him, when he got burnt deep. There were a couple ugly plays. So you think that's something he can iron out when he moves on to the NFL and get some NFL caliber coaching? You think that's something, his fundamentals, his more short area quickness, he'll be able to adjust on the next level? Do you think he's more scheme specific? Like, is he more of a zone guy? Is he scheme flexible? Can he play man? Can he play zone? Can he press? Where do you see him on that front?
I mean, I would like to see him press more. I like to see him get a little bit of press coverage in. He's not Ahmad Gardner in the sense of the physicality. Ahmad Gardner is like the ultimate physical specimen in terms of pure press coverage. Just stick him on a guy, he'll stay there. If he's going against a smaller dude, like a shiftier dude, he's not going to get far off the line of scrimmage. That's what you'd like to see from Ahmad Gardner, is that even though he is a little bit tighter on the hips, he's a little bit high hip, I guess you could say, so he doesn't necessarily turn as well as some of the other guys in this draft, which is part of the reason why Ahmad Gardner is at number 11 on my board and is not in the top 10, despite being one of those top cover guys this year. I think that Kaiir Elam is a little bit smoother and can be a little bit smoother than someone like Ahmad Gardner. It's just you need to get him to be fully focused. Because when he can do the stuff Ahmad Gardner does in terms of the physicality, the jamming, being able to kind of cover the smaller guys, even the shiftier guys. I think he can still stick with them. My concern, so again, is that sometimes it just feels like he's not fully there. I don't really know why that is, because there are moments where, like I said, he's phenomenal. He just locks guys down. He stays with them on the hips and just never leaves them. And then there are moments where it's like, where's your head at kind of on this play? I don't really understand what the thought process was in making this move. So I understand there's definitely a lot more low-profile stuff. And to me, Elam was the guy who stuck out when I put this board together as the top 10 guy. I was looking at him, and he's the one guy who really didn't fit for me in the top 10, but I still feel like he can be a really, really good player. So I ended up leaving him there at number 9.
Now, I know, we both know, that big boards changed throughout the year.
Oh, yeah.
Our big boards in September look drastically different now than they did then. And our boards, even by February, March, our boards are going to be totally different than they are now. Now, I myself, I'm a bit more of a perfectionist when it comes to my board. So I don't really like ranking guys like that too much on my overall board. I do it more by position first and then go from there. And I put my round grades on guys and sort it that way. And it's an intricate process for me. So I don't have my big board out quite yet. But I'm going to put something together because I know that's what the people want. They want to see rankings. They want to get inside our heads and see where we're thinking. And before we move on outside of the top 10 into the next tier of guys for you, because you had them in tiers. You had blue chip prospects, first rounders, second, third rounders, so on and so forth. So we're going to go over those tiers a little bit. But I do want to show some love to betting.net. It is your top sportsbook comparison site. Betting.net offers exclusive rewards on the best sports books out there. Head on over to betting.net. Now, I thoroughly enjoy picking your brain. I'm not going to lie, Sam. I'm not going to lie. So I'm looking at the rest of the board, and, nothing really stands out as what are you thinking? Because I like when you put this article on your website, what's your website, by the way, Sam? I want everyone to know.
Yeah, so if you go to a website called Substack, they host a bunch of different newsletters there. And mine is called Sports Talk with Sam Teets. It's totally free. All the content there is free. I try to make sure I get 2 articles out every week. Sometimes it's 3. It really depends on my work hours, but I try to do my best to make sure we get some NFL content and some draft content every week.
So head on over to Sam's website and you will be able to take a look at his rankings yourself and see all his tiers, where all his players are ranked. And there were a couple of hundred players you ranked, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there are 300 total that I ranked. I'm sure I'm missing some guys. I'm positive looking back now. There are some players that I really feel like I should have slotted in, and some guys that should have gone higher. But at some point, I'm the guy who's just like, you have to throw stuff out there, see what sticks, and then come back and redo it later on. So for me, it's not one huge hurrah. It's just throw a bunch of stuff out, maybe do once a month, and see what sticks, and then see what you like, and move forward from there. So this is my sort of just a draft for me that I'm going to build on once we get closer to the process.
I love it. So looking outside of your top 10, nothing really blows my mind away in terms of craziness. I do see Roger McCreary at 13, a little higher, actually the highest of any of the other big boards that I have on my consensus chart, not consensus rankings. I got to ask, you got 2 safeties with top 25 rankings. You got Jaquan Brisker, safety from Penn State, at 20. And you got Jordan Battle, the safety from Alabama, at 25.
Yeah.
You really think we got 2 safeties that are top 20 overall players, top 25 overall players in this class?
Well, outside Kyle Hamilton, you're going to have 3, I think, who are top 25 kind of guys. Because
I didn't count Hamilton. He's more of an athlete, if you will.
Yeah, Kyle Hamilton's a special dude. He's in his own tier alone, his own specifications. I get that. But these 2 guys, I mean, Battle and Brisker, to me, I had my questions on Battle going into the year. And I was admittedly lower on Battle than I think a lot of people were going into the season. I did not view him as a first-round kind of guy.
Okay.
And then the Mississippi State game happened, and I watched that one live, and that was a tremendous performance by Jordan Battle. Probably one of his best ones of the year. I think he had a defensive touchdown that one, or maybe not. But he had a really good game against Mississippi State. He ended up having 2 interceptions in that one. I watched that game live, and I was blown away by what I saw from him. He was also really good against LSU. He was really good against Georgia. Struggled a little bit against Auburn, but he had some really good games down the stretch where I was watching him. I'm like, this guy is really should be a first-round dude. And they move him around a lot. They'll play him in the box. They'll play him at free safety. They'll play him in the slot. And I think that ability to play all those positions, I'm not sure which one I like him best at the NFL level. I don't think he can be a single high guy who's going to cover the entire field. I don't think he has that kind of range. But probably going to end up being a strong safety in some certain scheme. I don't like him to be purely a box guy, but I think there are certain schemes that will fit him quite well. He's 6'1", about 210 pounds, a very strong physical dude. You want him to come in downhill at some points, but I think he's good enough in coverage that you can't take him out of the coverage game entirely.
What about Jaquan Brisker?
Jaquan Brisker is just the playmaker. He is around the ball whenever Penn State needed him to make a play. He did. From the very first week against Wisconsin, where he ended up having an interception, he was always out there making plays for them in crucial moments. That's what I love about him. He's just an X factor to me who can go out there and make plays. Not the same way. Jordan Battle and him are very different, in my opinion. Brisker, to me, played a lot more in the box, and he's probably going to be closer to being a box caliber safety in the NFL than Battle is, despite being a little bit smaller than he is. But Brisker, at the same time, his coverage abilities were really good. Like, his numbers in coverage have been phenomenal. I don't know if necessarily that will translate to the NFL, but he's been tremendous in coverage when he has a chance to show it. So I'd be interested to see if in this pre-draft process or in one of these kind of showcase games, he gets an opportunity to go out there and try to play a little bit more of a free safety role instead of just playing in the box for most of the game. Because I want to see him play in space because I think he'll be really good at it, even though he didn't get to do that as much as I hoped he would have in college.
Yeah, for me, what stands out for both of these players is they both have very good field awareness, good ball skills, good job of reading the quarterback size, and just a general all-around, both of them have very good spatial awareness. So I think that's something that would definitely translate to the next level. As with you, I don't know where they might play better. I know Jordan, you mentioned you don't know if he's a single high or a box, maybe a little bit of both. And I know you just mentioned that Brisker will be more of a potential in the box kind of guy. But outside of them, is there anyone in the secondary that really stands out to you? outside of those top corners that we mentioned, outside of those top two guys, maybe someone in the back end of this first round, early second round that sticks out to you?
Yeah, Andrew Booth Jr. from Clemson. If people don't know, I graduated from Clemson. I got to see Andrew Booth play in person for a couple of games. Not a lot, not as much as some like a T. Higgins or a Justin Ross, who I saw plenty of. But Booth to me is very interesting because he is, when you want to talk about highs and lows, this is the ultimate high and low kind of guy for me coming out of college right now. Because his highs, he's tremendous. He's a shutdown guy. He's physical. He'll come up. I saw him against Georgia. Come up. It was a wide receiver screen, the first game of the year. He comes up, blows up the receiver who's blocking him, takes the receiver as the blocker, shoves him back into the receiver catching the ball, and tackles both of them. This guy is tremendous in terms of being able to come up and play the run or go out to play wide receiver screens, take on blocks. He's so physical in that role. He's probably the most physical tackler of this group. Now, the only issue is that he sometimes flies in a little too quickly, misses a tackle because of his momentum. And that's kind of where he's at right now. It's trying to balance his physicality with the ability to be in control. Because there are times to me where he looks like he's not fully in control. He's flying off the hook a little bit. But again, like I said, when he's locked in, he is one of the best cover corners there is. Now, he had a bad game against NC State that I think a lot of people are going to look at, and it's probably why he's not going to be a top 20 pick. It's probably why he's going to be bottom of the first round, top of the second round. Because he did not play well against NC State, against larger wide receivers. But he jumps so high. He jumps so high. He's got great ball skills. He had a tremendous one-handed catch back in 2020. I had to go look that up. It was phenomenal. This guy has really good ball skills, really nice fluidity, really good athleticism, really good tackling ability. It's just he needs more reps because he is fairly inexperienced compared to the other guys I've talked about, McCreary, Gardner. He's not that level of experience right now.
And I mean, some other of his better traits, his length. He's got 33 inch arms, which is he's 6 foot, give or take. That kind of length is worth its weight in gold in the NFL. Now, do you think Booth is, since I asked about these other guys, might as well ask with Booth, do you see him more as a zone corner, more of a man guy, a little mix of both, which would increase
I would like
value?
to see
Where do you
him.
peg him?
Yeah, I would like to see him more in man because I think he has, unlike someone like Elam, who you might worry about a little bit. I think Booth has the ability to stick with shiftier receivers. When I saw Booth struggle this year, it was more of him kind of self-sabotaging a little bit. Like he ended up on the ground a couple of times in coverage where it just looked like he slipped. I don't really know why that is. It's really confusing to me to watch back because he ends up slipping. And it's not a balance issue to me. It's not really like he's just getting thrown off his feet. It just genuinely seems like he goes to play and push and he kind of just falls down. It happened a couple of times, which at some point that becomes a trend. So I really want to see what was up with that. But overall, I don't think he's going to struggle with shiftier guys. I don't think he's going to struggle with smaller receivers. I think he has the ability to play man coverage. I think he has the speed and the athleticism, and like you mentioned, the length to stick with guys who are smaller and still be an impact player. My concern with him would probably be against some of the size in the NFL. Again, he's listed as 6 foot, which means he's probably closer to 5'11". So that's probably when he had something, because these teams jack their guys up a little bit.
Yeah.
These teams they give him a little bit of an advantage. So I think he's going to be a little bit on the smaller size compared to someone like Kyrie Elam or Ahmad Gardner. Obviously bigger than Trent McDuffie, though. So I think size will be an issue for him. I think size and speed, the combination will be an issue for him, but not the smaller, shiftier dudes.
All right, before we move to the next group, because it's going to be a big one. That's what she said, giggity. I do want to throw some more love to betting.net. The grueling truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sports book that's right for you. Head on over to betting.net. Now, we couldn't talk about your big board without talking about this position group because this is the money, baby. Everybody needs them. Few teams got them. I'm talking about the quarterback position and a franchise quarterback. So I have some questions.
All right.
Your top-rated quarterback on this big board came in at number 23, and that was Matt Corral out of Ole Miss. Then you had Kenny Pickett as your QB2 out of Pittsburgh at 26. Then you didn't have another quarterback until the late 30s, where Sam Howell is your QB3 at number 39.
Yep.
Is Matt Corral, the top quarterback in this class? Or do you still have to, you're not quite sure quite yet? You want to see what goes on?
Well, frankly, I have no idea. I mean, we talked about Zappe earlier. Zappe could be the top QB in this class for all I know at this point. I mean, it feels like Corral has done the bare minimum needed to just hold on to this position, because he had some big games early on and just kind of sat on those big games. He kind of just let it play out. And he didn't really do anything to screw himself up, but he never really grasped this whole position. He never really went out there and said, I am the best quarterback here. I am the one who deserves this. It's kind of like Bryce Young did against Georgia. Bryce Young went out against Georgia and that night took hold of the Heisman Trophy and said, I am the best quarterback in college football. Matt Corral did not do that to me for this draft class. He just didn't. He didn't have that game where he asserted himself as being the top dog in this QB group, which is why someone like Kenny Pickett could potentially overtake him, which is why I say even someone like Zappe could overtake him. Carson Strong, Sam Howell, I really don't know, because Matt Corral he's been good this year. And there's some size concerns, I'll admit, but he's got some good mobility. He's got good arm strength. He's able to create a little bit out of pocket. He's able to create off platform. He's able to do these things. He's cut down the turnover issues we saw that plagued him in 2020. He cut them down significantly, by the way. And I really don't know. This QB class to me is so confusing compared to last year where I was like, oh, all these guys are good. You can't really make so much mistake. Now I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they're good. Maybe they're not. It's hard. This group really comes down to me right now. The top spot, Corral and Kenny Pickett. And after that, someone like Sam Howell, who hasn't really had to read the full field as much as I hoped he would in North Carolina because of that offense. That's why he's down as being like more of a second round kind of guy. Someone like Carson Strong, who has all the arm strength you want in the world, but is not a mobile dude and has a tendency to kind of put the ball in harm's way or just jack it up. Those guys to me, are second round guys on this board. But I could see either of them rising to the first round just because it's so close at the QB rankings right now.
So with your QB rankings, you have Corral 1, Pickett 2, Sam Howell's your QB 3, Carson Strong out of Nevada at 44th overall is your QB 4, and Malik Willis from Liberty, we were just talking about him earlier, at number 56 on your big board. Of those 5 guys, which I'm not talking about the burger place, but of these 5 quarterbacks, who do you think is the most likely to rise up boards as we get closer to draft day?
Ooh, to get higher? The ones who I think would have the best chance to get higher on the boards overall would probably be Kenny Pickett and Carson Strong. Okay. I'm obviously a bit lower on Malik Willis than a lot of people. So I think Malik Willis will probably sit in general where he's at right now on a lot of big boards. I think that Carson Strong is someone who could go out there and really impress guys with what he talks about when he's describing how to run offenses and stuff like that. I think he's someone who could surprise you in that aspect and maybe get a little bit higher on boards. And the other one, I mentioned Kenny Pickett, just because there are some concerns that kind of linger about some of the aspects like the hand size and stuff like that, which I don't put too much stock in. But I just being able to see him go out there and throw an NFL ball to receivers, just in the combine, just see him throw it a little bit, see how it looks. I don't put a lot of stock in the combine. I really don't generally. But just to be able to see him go out there and just throw on guys, I would be very encouraged just to see something as simple as that. I think those two really have a chance to rise up. Kenny Pickett might have been the best quarterback from this group to play this past year in terms of just putting on good film. So I think Pickett has a chance to rise. And like I said, Carson Strong, I think, can impress a lot of people because he might have the better physical tools in terms of arm talent of all these guys in this class. And we might be underrating him the most of everyone in this group.
Like I said, I don't do my own big boards or anything like that, like this, like you've done here, until at the very least, like the Senior Bowl or something like that, where I really start putting things together. I want to see what goes on because the Senior Bowl is a huge opportunity for these guys. And we're going to see 4 of these top quarterback prospects at the Senior Bowl. Confirmed, they're going to be in Mobile, Alabama. It's going to be Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Bailey Zappe, all confirmed. So we're going to sort through this a lot sooner than later, I think. But before we move on, because I do want to go a little further down the board, and we are running a little low on time here. So I do want to say that betting.net you could find the best place to bet for you. Betting.net offers expert and user reviews for every online sportsbook and casino in your state. Head on over to betting.net. So, final little part here for your big board, which is available on your website, as we discussed earlier. We'll get that again before the end of the show. There was some interesting stuff going on there later on in your board, and I wanted to talk about some guys that you had a bit lower that are getting more love elsewhere. Particularly, I'm going to start with, just because he's my boy at my school, Brenton Cox Jr. You had him at 131 on your board, whereas elsewhere he's lowest is in the 80s. So I'm curious, what made you feel with a prospect like that, when you see players of this ilk, guys who aren't necessarily top picks or first or second round guys? How do you, when you get to the hundreds, you're talking about third, fourth round grades, how do you value certain positions or certain players once you get to that point?
Well, once you get to that point, it's like you're talking about late second, third round, maybe even top of the fourth round. You're looking for guys who just athletically jump off the page to you. And someone like Brenton Cox Jr. is a very good athlete, obviously. I think all these guys are very good athletes. But to me, Brenton Cox Jr. is not the super athlete that some guys are. And he did not have the best season this year compared to what he was in 2020. If he came out after 2020, there's no doubt to me he would have been a top 100 pick, probably would have been a top 70 pick. But he did not play as well this year as he did last year. He had significantly fewer pressures. And frankly, I just feel like he had some games where he just was not fully in there compared to what he was last year. He had troubles against LSU, some issues against Georgia, where he was not making as much of an impact as you would have expected. Now, he was tremendous against Florida State at the end of the year. He had certainly had some standout games. He was pretty good against Alabama as well at the start of the year. But like I said, those games where he kind of took off was a little bit upsetting because this is a really deep edge class. There's a lot of really good edge rushers here. Someone like Josh Pascal from Kentucky, who I have higher than him at 119. Josh Pascal had a career year where he was just unblockable half the time. He looked entirely different this year compared to what he looked last year. So the issue is that they got a lot of guys like Josh Pascal, who's 278 pounds, 6'3", a freak athlete, and just had a better year this year than Brenton Cox Jr., which kind of pushes him down the board because you have so many elite edge rushers who are better this year. And again, it's not a knock necessarily against Brenton Cox Jr., but there's 24 edge rushers higher than him. If you want to be really picky, there's probably 20 edge rushers that would still keep higher than him because there are a lot of guys on this board who are really, really good. And it just comes down to the fact that he was not as productive this year as he was last year, and I saw him take a step back against some elite competition.
Well, I'm just hoping you move him up a little bit when this all said and done. That his athletic profile moves him up that board. Gotta see my Gators get love, man.
And I wouldn't worry about it. He'll probably be moving up at some point here because there are some guys who I think he could definitely jump over. Someone like a Nolan Smith, who I had a little higher than him, would probably move down the more I get to look at him because he's a little bit more undersized.
All right, so I think that puts a pretty bow on this one, and I want to close out by saying betting.net finds the best promotions, offers, and bonus codes so you don't have to. Head over to their website, betting.net, now to take advantage of things like free bets and matching deposits. So with that, Sam, why don't you tell our lovely viewers what your Twitter handle is and where we can find you online?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Sam_Teats33. That's where I post all my articles, all my content. So you're looking to find my big board, you can just go there, click on any of the links. It should direct you right to where my newsletter is. You can, from there, just navigate around and find all the content you want. Again, some NFL stuff every week, but mostly draft stuff at this point. Feel free to go check all that stuff out.
Perfect. And I'm on Twitter. It is at DB Talking Sports. D as in Dan, B as in Bob. That's DB Talking Sports. And Sam, I want to thank you for coming on again. Every Monday we do this, babies. We get on around 7 o'clock and go in for a bit, hit you guys with some knowledge. We'll be back next week. For Sam, I'm Dan Kornhauser. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great night. We'll catch you guys next week.